Impact is probably one of my favorite players of all time throughout League of Legends history because I think his career is so perennially underrated that it's very sad to see that he doesn't get more recognition for exactly how much skill he has at playing League of Legends. I mean, since this guy has been away from basically his days in SKT, he's been consistently underrated for the value that he brings to all of his teams. He's never won an MVP, and he's played for almost 10 years now. He's only been to LCS All Stars once, and he also went to LCK All Stars as well. And he's only gotten first All Pro twice. Having such a crazy storied career and it spanning almost 10 years and never having won an MVP, and we could think of all the 6 splits to where he was doing an insane job on his team, like for instance Team Liquid when they went on their 4-peat, right? And it's just very strange to see his career not get the grandiose mentions that a lot of other players do, and even other weak side players even get some of this attention as well, which he is also a weak side player. And I think what the disconnect also too is that there seems to be a limited perspective when it comes to fans' perceptions. And I think that's also very different from the teams, and I'm talking about internally within the LCS. And even public analysts' perception seems to be different from what the teams think about Impact, and the fact that they think he's a very good player, obviously, because he's had such a long career at this point. Otherwise he wouldn't be getting all these team offers and whatnot, especially in the millions, of course. And I think with this as such, to some degree, I think the analysts, especially on the Riot broadcasts and whatnot, maybe some of the journalists as well too, in the scenes in the media, are biased of the fans' perception, because the fans' perception gives some type of barometer exactly of how popular a player is and how much they can play up narratives and such, and then they kind of have that influence in the back of their mind when they're analyzing the game itself. And I think that's exactly partially why Impact's career has been tainted somewhat. Because I think, first of all, just to talk about some of his skills and I think what he does very good at, first, it would be remiss to not mention his TPs. His teleports are, I think, some of the best in all of the West. In fact, I think he understands the concept of how to TP, when to TP, and then also to how to TP flank. He knows all these different scenarios of how to use his teleport. And I think he's still outclassing several different other top laners when it comes to this, even with, the teleport change to where now you can't even cancel it. So it becomes more important for you to know exactly when to TP, because otherwise you kind of get fucked. And so we've seen Impact do amazing TP plays and whatnot, and that can only be as a result or a factor of him specifically knowing how to TP. Because sometimes we may think that TP is a team-wide summoner spell, and I think to some degree it is, but there comes a time, if you're the top laner, that you have to press the button, and you're the only one that can press that fucking button. And Impact exactly knows when to actually press the button itself, and also to tell his team, this is what I need in order to set up for a teleport play. So keep this in mind, and then we can try and go and execute this play. Speaking of that, I think he probably has some of the best communication out of any top laner. And I say this partially because, of all the mic checks that we've heard throughout the years, especially if you were around during that time when mic checks were popular in the LCS. But not only that, even if you just look at his pro view in this current day and age, 2021, you could see that he talks quite a lot, and he's talking very consistently. And I was actually quite surprised that he was talking that much, in fact, even in the early game. And you could tell that he is somewhat of a leader when it comes to, plays that Evil Geniuses, with the team that he's on now, they're implementing. Not only that, but just surprisingly, Impact's English is actually pretty good, and I would say way more than serviceable. In fact, whenever I've interviewed him, he has really great English. Yeah, a little bit's broken here and there, but you can have a very intellectual conversation with him, and he understands a lot of the, like philosophical points maybe that you're trying to make, like some abstractions and whatnot. And so I think his communication is fantastic as far as I'm concerned. For team fighting, I think he's hands down one of the best team fighters. As far as top laners go, I wouldn't say he is like elite level tier, but I'd say he's far past what would be considered serviceable. I'd say he's definitely always been around top 3, top 4, if not. And I think just the way that he's able to set up his ADCs, first of all, because mostly he's playing tanks and whatnot, or initiators, he does that very well, and he knows exactly how to space out the enemy team, which targets to go for exactly in a team fight, when to go in, and then also of course his TP usage when it comes to being a tank and whatnot, and setting up the other side of the map, which also brings me to my other point, which is wave manipulation. It's very clear to see that he understands how to manipulate the wave. There was, I think it was 2 weeks ago or something, or maybe a week ago, I saw him actually culling the wave in order to then get a CS lead early on in the game in the early laning phase after there was a recall and whatnot, and pretty intelligent from him. And I'm not saying like that just makes him the wave manipulation master, but it's very clear that since he's playing weak side a lot and he doesn't die a lot, he inherently must be good at wave manipulation. I just don't think there's any other way around it when you're playing weak side so frequently for so many years. And that also comes to the point of that he is very good, I would say best in class when it comes to avoiding ganks and outplaying ganks, more importantly. I mean, how many times have we seen this fucking guy end up 2v or 1v2ing a gank and then getting a double kill somehow, and then sometimes even still surviving? It's absolutely absurd, just his quick reaction mechanics when it comes to people putting pressure on him and kind of putting gank pressure on him. And then also his teams realize this and can get something across the map. And that's, I think, one of the big win conditions of any team that gets Impact, in fact, is that they know that he's able to hold his own in the 1v1. He's able to outplay ganks. He's able to play smart, even pull off from the wave or from his tower itself in order for his team to get something on the other side of the map, like a dragon, for instance. So I think just overall, I would actually put Impact as the best weak side top laner of all time. And I'm talking about in all regions, in fact. I'm including LCK. I'm including LPL, even though I don't know much about LPL, so I'll admit that. Even including LEC or, EULCS back in the day, I would say that he is the best weak side top laner, better than Soaz, better than Odoamne. I think he outclasses them, especially in the longevity factor as well, too. And considering how high of a level he's played consistently for so long, and especially considering after how many different metas that he's gone through. He's gone through so many different metas, to where you have to play fucking Lulu top and shit. And, with the whole lane swap meta, in fact. And then he had to go through, obviously, the whole mage thing that everyone else had to go through with Mage's bot and how to figure out that puzzle itself. So I just think this guy stands the test of time when it comes to being an all-time great, like surely. And I think one of his caveats, I guess, is that he gets criticized for mailing it in during the early weeks of, a split or whatnot. And I think to some degree you can see that in his play, and that he'll just be dying to random shit sometimes. But I would also say that happens with a lot of veterans anyways, is sometimes they do mail it in the very beginning. Like, famously G2, they, don't really try too hard in the very beginning, and then they're able to pick up steam later on and start rolling on people. Like that, I think that just comes with the territory of being a veteran. And so I can excuse that, especially if you aren't playing abysmal, which for the most part, he usually isn't playing abysmal at the very beginning of a split. Anyways, I could really only think of maybe once, maybe twice, just on offhand that he's actually played terrible early on in a split. And currently, right now, in Evil Geniuses, I'd say that first of all, Jizuke and Danny are getting most of the praise within this entire organization or squad, but I really think that Impact is being overlooked right now, and the fact that he's able to still keep drawing pressure and be a pressure point on the map. And also, like, why do you think Danny is able to do such crazy shit in team fights too? Is because, Impact also has to do his job as well too, sometimes as a tank. And so what I'd really like to see, as far as just overall as like the behind the scenes of what Impact does, because it's clear we could point to all the things that he does good in game, right? The TPs that I was mentioning, or avoiding ganks and whatnot. But what I think part of his value, I'm assuming too, is that he's most likely pretty good in reviews, because although, yes, his gameplay is very good and whatnot, and I would say his communication is good as well too, and that he's able to talk a lot and express his thoughts a lot and exactly what he wants to do, especially in those TP scenarios, is that he is also noted to be pretty good in reviews and team reviews. And so I'd actually like to hear what the fuck he's saying in some of those reviews, just get like a little sneak peek as to like the inner mind of Impact, outside of the game, in terms of, just the VOD reviews and stuff, and what he's going through with his teams in order to shape it. Because I mean, in a team like Evil Geniuses, I would think that'd be a very useful skill, in fact, that you could tell, some of your rookie teammates or whatnot, or, your more rambunctious players to like, hey, tone it down here. This is what we need to focus on. Remember the objective. Like, this is why we fucked up. And if we just did it this way, maybe, then, things would have turned out differently. So I think that also clues me into an idea maybe that Impact is good in reviews, because his team ends up ramping up usually at the very end of the split. And I can only think that that's because of the review sessions that they all keep going through and whatnot, and Impact probably being a good teacher in and of himself. So overall, I just think Impact is sorely underrated, both from the outside perspective as well as the analyst perspective when it comes to just the Riot broadcast or even public analysts themselves. And I think really he's just one of the greatest weak side top laners of all time, and I don't think he gets the praise that he truly deserves.